This 26-year-old Missouri teacher was charged with statutory R after she was caught with one of her 16-year-old students. And it turns out that the victim's father knew this was going on the entire time. This all happened in Lakeway High School, where Haley Carmack worked as a math teacher, and she had only been there for a year until a student contacted the school's resource officer and told them that there was something weird going on between Haley and another student. The witness also said that Haley assaulted the 16-year-old boy in his family's driveway, and that the victim had scratches all over his back from Haley. And allegedly, Haley used other students as lookouts so that other teachers wouldn't come in while she was doing inappropriate things. It's also been said that Haley has been in trouble in the past because she was seen being too close with students. And what's disturbing is that this child's father knew that this was going on the entire time, and he didn't report it because he said that it was gonna happen behind his back, so he might as well let it happen. Haley denied everything, but then police found text messages between her and the student. Haley was arrested and charged, and so was the father of the 16-year-old. Did anyone else know that OJ Simpson had prostate cancer? That in itself was news to me, but turns out that OJ passed away yesterday at the age of 76 from cancer. Personally, I was never a fan of OJ for obvious reasons, but for those who don't know what I'm talking about, let's recap a little about who OJ was and what he's mainly known for. He began his career in the NFL and he made a name for himself very quickly. Then in 1979, he retired from football and he began focusing on acting, and he was actually in a number of movies, including this one. He divorced his first wife in 1979 and moved on to marry Nicole Brown. During their relationship, Nicole said that OJ was extremely abusive, both physically and emotionally. They ended up filing for divorce, and in 1994, Nicole and a friend of hers, Ron Goldman, who was also a waiter at a restaurant that OJ and Nicole went to, they were both found murdered outside of her house. And the way that their bodies were found, the whole crime scene was so disturbing. And let's just say that the entire investigation and crime scene was an absolute shit show. There's so many details in this case that I can't even explain everything in one video, but there's plenty of documentaries on this case that you guys can watch. A lot of people were convinced that OJ did it, but he was never convicted. And one of the main things that people still talk about till this day, and was said to be one of the reasons why the jury was doubtful that OJ committed the murders, was this glove. These gloves that were used in the murder were covered in blood, and it was tried on by OJ during the trial, and it didn't fit him, which was supposed to prove that he didn't do it. But experts argue that it's possible that the gloves could have still been worn by OJ during the murders, despite not fitting his hands during the trial. It's a whole thing that even till this day, I'm so interested in this case, not only because it hasn't been solved, but because people are convinced OJ did it.
People who killed celebrities react to their jail sentence. Eric Holder Jr. murdered Nipsey Hussle.
Alone, it would be 50 years to life. The total sentence would be 60 years to life in prison.
His reaction.
The court would also recommend to the Department of Corrections that the defendant be housed in a facility that would address his mental health needs.
Michael Boatwright murdered extentation.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. From here, you will go and be placed in a cell that has a stainless steel slab that's attached to the wall. That's your bed. And next to it is a stainless steel sink and a stainless steel toilet. That's the furniture that you have in that cell. You'll spend every hour and every day and every week and every year of your life in that cell. And one day, they'll come and open up that cell in the morning and you'll have passed on. And only on that day will you have served your sentence.
His reaction.
To life in Florida State Prison.
This surgeon was trying to save one person on the operating table and managed to kill 3 people in the room before he was done. During the 1800s, Robert Liston was known and renowned as being one of the fastest surgeons alive. Now, given that back then anesthesia did not exist as we know it, this was a very good thing because the patients were always awake for the entire procedure. And on this particular day, Robert was performing a leg amputation, and he was working so quickly and he was in such a hurry that he actually cut off 2 of his assistant's fingers. The assistant and the patient unfortunately both ended up dying of gangrene because the saw that Robert was using was not clean. And well, what about the third death, you ask? Well, as it turns out, he was swiping and he was working so quickly that he accidentally swiped one of the other doctor's coats that was in the room, and the doctor thought that he himself had been slashed, even though he wasn't. And he had a heart attack right there, fell to the floor, and died. And thus, an operation that was meant to save 1 life took 3.
This doctor was caught storing poisoned IV bags because he was angry over potentially losing his job. This all started in August 2022 when a surgical center in Dallas was forced to be closed down after there were a number of unexplained emergencies during patient procedures. One of these emergencies included this healthy 18-year-old who came in for a sinus surgery. Well, he ended up going into cardiac arrest and almost lost his life. All the patients who had the same reaction during a routine procedure survived, except for this woman who also happened to be a doctor. Dr. Melanie Casper became sick one day and was given an IV bag to take home to help her feel better. But minutes after inserting the needle, she suffered a heart attack and passed away. It turns out that these patients were poisoned with a nerve blocker, which was later found in the IV bags. After conducting an investigation, they realized that these IV bags had small holes in them, which showed that they were tampered with. Then, after looking at surveillance footage, Dr. Reynaldo Ortiz was seen storing tainted IV bags, which turned out to be the same bags used on these patients. Prosecutors believe that Dr. Reynaldo was angry that he was going to lose his job over a problem in one of his previous surgeries and think that's why he did this. He now faces up to life in prison if convicted.
This sick 23-year-old woman was pretending to be 14 years old online so she could have sex with teenage boys. Folks, I typically cover horror movies. This is fucking horror. This is real life horror, okay? People are sick. Alyssa was first arrested back in November. In November is when she was first suspected of having a sexual relationship with a young boy. But while looking further into the case, detectives realized there were maybe 3 or 4 other victims around the age of 13 and 14 years old. Apparently, Alyssa was communicating to these underage boys on TikTok and Snapchat. And this is honest to God why I probably won't give my boys a cell phone until I feel it's appropriate. At that time, she was living with her parents in November with the first arrest. She was arrested last week for multiple felony charges, including sexual cyber harassment, possession of child pornography. They ordered for Alyssa not to have any electronics access while being in jail currently. Her next court appearance is April 16th. I will keep you guys updated and make sure you follow for all things spooky, because this sure as shit is spooky. And it really has me scared for our kids of this generation. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments.
This is a sickening case of the dad who ran over his daughter. In January 2022, Lauren Malt was just 19 years old. She should have been safe in the company of her father, Nigel Malt. However, in an alcohol-fueled rage, he did the unthinkable. Nigel was estranged from his wife and children and had been banned from going to their house or to his ex Karen's workplace. This was apparently due to a string of incidents where he was threatening towards them and also had assaulted his ex Karen. On the 23rd of January 2022, he arrived at the family house. He argued with Lauren and her boyfriend, which actually escalated into him threatening the boyfriend with a crowbar. He then returned to his black Mercedes and began to run over Lauren with the vehicle. He then reversed over her and drove over her again in what was described as a fit of rage. The 19-year-old was effectively crushed to death. And then coldly, Nigel decided to take her body, put it in the passenger seat, and then drive to his ex Karen's work. He had more than twice the legal alcohol limit in his system and was given a life sentence of a minimum of 18 years.
Joshua, what do you have to say for yourself? Do you have any words for the families?
¿Qué tienes que decir? Anything to say? Before that, capital murder, asesinato capital. I love my family.
What about the family of the person you killed?
I'm not a murderer. Not a murderer? I'm not a murderer.
Let's talk about the woman that was frozen solid and survived. On December 20th of 1980, Jean Hilliard's car got stuck in a ditch and she tried walking to get help. In the morning, she was found nearly frozen solid in a cattle rancher's front porch in negative 22-degree weather. She was so frozen that when they got her to the hospital, the needles couldn't even penetrate through the ice. And her body temperature was so low, it didn't even register on a thermometer. Medical staff all thought she was dead, but they decided let's try to warm her up and see what happens. Gradually warming her up, they eventually got a beat of 12 beats per minute. And this method worked. She actually went on to make a full recovery, but how scary is this? And obviously the picture behind me is fake, it's just for illustrative purposes due to guidelines. But it's estimated she was frozen solid for about 6 hours. I feel like making a full recovery after this is actually like insane. I would have assumed the blood supply to your brain would be kind of non-existent and you go brain dead. I guess in her case, she got extremely lucky, especially for that 6-hour duration. Let me know what you guys think about Jean Hilliard's story in the comment section below. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
How this 15-year-old girl escaped a terrifying serial killer. 15-year-old Kara Robinson Chamberlain was in the front yard of her friend's home when a seemingly normal man got out of his car and approached her. That man was really 38-year-old serial killer Richard Avanis, who abducted 15-year-old Kara, put her in a storage bin that was in the backseat of his car, brought her to his home where he assaulted her for 18 hours. But Kara, at only 15 years old, started memorizing everything. From the serial number of the storage bin he transported her in, to the kind of cigarette he smoked, even the name of his dentist and doctor that Kara saw on papers that were just laying around the apartment. Once Richard fell asleep, Kara was able to get herself out of the handcuffs that he put her in, remove herself from the leg restraints that he also put her in, and tiptoe out of the front door. Once outside, she ran towards the nearest car who took her to the police station. Through the many details that Kara remembered, they were able to find Richard's apartment again, but by the time they got there, Richard had already fled. Strangely enough, Richard went to his sister's house and just started confessing everything to her. Before abducting Kara, Richard had abducted, essayed, and unalived at least 3 other young girls, the youngest only 12 years old. Richard's also suspected to be guilty of even more young girls' deaths, but unfortunately we might never know if he is responsible because Richard unalived himself before the police were able to take him into custody. All of this happening while Richard's wife and mother were together at Disneyland. I love sharing these stories of survival. It reminds me a lot of Jimmy Close and JC Lee Dugard, which we also covered on this channel. It also reminds me a lot of Elizabeth Smart, which we haven't covered yet. So if you guys would be interested in seeing the case of Elizabeth Smart and how she saved herself from a really scary dude, let me know in the comments.
What are some of the strangest ways that police have tried to catch a killer? Well, in 1860, the body of 3-year-old Seville Kent was found at the bottom of an outhouse. But there was something very strange found next to his body. There was a woman's bra. So police decided that they were going to make all of the women that lived inside the Kent estate try on the bra and then convict the woman who it fit best. And even stranger than that was who fit into the bra. It was the boy's nanny. The whole story is full of so many twists and turns and juicy gossip that I had to cover the whole thing on the podcast this week. It's maybe the only time a woman's gone on trial for the fit of a bra.
Let me tell you the legend of the Candy Lady. And I suggest you listen to this story with the lights on. In the early 1900s, in the tiny town of Terrell, Texas, parents used to warn their children about the Candy Lady. Story goes, she would leave candy on the windowsills of children, lure them out with notes and the promise of more candy. The children would follow, go, and never be seen again. Stories of the Candy Lady began to circulate as children in the area began disappearing left and right. A farmer found rotten teeth on his property before ultimately finding the body of a young boy whose pockets were stuffed with candy. Older children in that same town confessed to adults saying that they had found candy on their own windowsills, with notes saying, "Come outside for more after your parents go to bed." During the height of these disappearances, an officer took it on himself to investigate and try to get to the bottom of this, and he himself went missing and was later found dead. His eyeballs had been stabbed with forks, and his pockets had been stuffed with candy. Many people believe that the Candy Lady was a woman named Clara Kane. And it was said that Clara and her husband lost a beautiful 5-year-old daughter in a tragic farming accident. And the legend goes that Clara was driven to madness with grief, and she blamed her husband for the accident and ultimately killed her husband and began snatching children in the town. And to this day, the legend of the Candy Lady is believed by some to be nothing more than a story that parents use to keep children safe and afraid of strangers. Others believe it to be a true story of heartbreak and heinous crime by a bereaved mother.
Breaking news, they've arrested 4 individuals in connection to the missing Oklahoma moms. Though authorities have been tight-lipped since the 2 have disappeared, they have now released new details. They said the moms were believed to have been SHOT with pools of BLOOD left on the ground next to their empty vehicle. As you may remember, their vehicle was found about 1,000 feet off of Oklahoma's Highway 95. A convoy of 20 police vehicles, including SWAT trucks, were seen going to the grandmother's home yesterday. They said the home is located on the Oklahoma Panhandle. Texas County Sheriff's officials confirmed that the 54-year-old grandmother and her boyfriend were both arrested. Shortly after, they confirmed they had a total of 4 individuals in custody. Authorities believe this is all stemming from a nasty divorce and custody battle. The woman in which Veronica was traveling with is said to be more of an acquaintance than a friend. The pastor's wife is said to supervise Butler's visitations with her children. Just before setting out on this trip to pick up her children, she filed a petition in court that would give her more time with her children and full custody. Within those filings, it claims that Veronica Butler and the grandmother of the children were not getting along due to the nasty battle. Veronica Butler has weekly court-mandated visits with her children on Saturdays. The preacher's wife who is accompanying her was listed as one of the supervisors on those visitations. Here is the official release statement by authorities. Law enforcement is still currently working to locate the 2 victims. For full details on this case and to stay up to date, make sure you click the playlist below. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
Did you guys know blue people actually exist? This family is famous in Kentucky for methemoglobinemia. It's a condition that turns the skin blue. And the only way it gets like this is through extreme inbreeding. The Fugate family, which is the blue family, just married each other. The main person married his aunt, and then his brother married his cousin, and then all the children married their cousins. This disease is sometimes life-threatening because the blood cells can't carry as much oxygen. The capacity is greatly reduced. And I mean, to get this disease, you have to do extreme inbreeding, so I'm sure that is the least of your issues. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that you would have if you had this disease. Also, since methemoglobin is already oxidized, it can't bind to oxygen. Your blood turns this like chocolatey color, and obviously, you start to turn blue because of the lack of oxygen. Your SpO2 rate will be like 85%. Also, your organs, your heart, your brain, stuff like that, those can all be affected because they need oxygen. Definitely an interesting story. Blue people are real, as we can see. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below, and as always, these videos are for informational purposes only. This is Nusha of Kami. Let's talk about the crimes that she committed. On December 10th, 2023, she ordered an Uber from her hotel to the Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Now, during the ride, she got frustrated with the Uber driver, saying that this was taking so long to get there. She then grabbed the Uber driver's phone and threw it out the window. He then stopped the car, got out to go retrieve his phone, and then she stole the car. The Uber driver was then left stranded and then alerted the Austin Police Department at the airport. On top of all this, she used the Uber driver's credit card to rack up a $120 bill at the airport store. The officers luckily arrested her before she could board her flight, and the Uber driver's Chevy Cruze was found and returned to him. When questioned, she was kind of unbothered and she just made the Uber driver aware that he was going too slow and she would just take the car. She was then held at the Travis County Jail before posting a $10,000 bond. But that is wild, the fact that she just threw this guy's phone out the window and stole the car. And obviously she didn't really care. She's kind of unbothered in her mugshot. Let me know what you guys think about Nusha Afkami in the comments section below. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a picture of this man, and they said that he went to prison because he got picked on because of his haircut. And I didn't believe it. So I typed his name into Google. And sure enough, he did go to prison because he got picked on for his haircut. And he wanted to have his barber in his music video, and his barber declined. So 22-year-old Kadarius Pride shot his barber 3 times in his barber's home in front of his barber's mom. Then he turned a gun on his barber's mom and said, "What did you see?" She said, "I didn't see nothing." He said, "Are you gonna tell?" She said, "No." So he let her live. But then he just turned himself in, because being on the run from the cops, it takes a tremendous amount of strength. It takes strength that normal people just don't have. You gotta somehow be able to make money without getting a job. You gotta somehow be able to live without a cell phone, live without social media, live without being on the grid, basically. He couldn't do that, so he turned himself in ASAP. And the mother who said she wouldn't tell, yep, she told. But she did deserve to see her son shot 3 times in front of her by one of his clients because he didn't want to be in a music video. But Twitter's saying he shot his barber because he was getting made fun of for his haircut. I want you to look at this man's haircut. Is this something that you would make fun of? Because if it's true that he was made fun of for his haircut and it cost another man his life, then that's a shame. Memphis, Tennessee, your life is worth the jokes that are made at one of your clients' expense, if this is true. But what do you guys think? Do you think that this man deserved to go to prison after shooting his barber 3 times in front of his mother and then threatening his mother for not wanting to be in his music video? Let me know how you feel.
This 77-year-old man went to war with a Mexican cartel. Alezo Garzo Tamez had spent his entire life building and working at his ranch, and one day the cartel wanted to claim it as their own property. In the AM hours of November 13th, 2010, 77-year-old Don Alejo was startled by a convoy of trucks approaching his property. This wasn't someone trying to do honest business. It was the Los Zetas cartel. The truck stopped and out came heavily armed cartel members. One of the members approached Alejo and demanded that he handed over the ranch and informed him it would now be property of Los Zetos. They then gave him an ultimatum: leave within 24 hours, and if you're still here when we return, we will kill you. Don Alejo then took a moment and replied, "I'll be waiting. I'll see you in the morning." When they left, they definitely thought Alejo was bluffing. What would a 77-year-old man do to around 20 combat-aged men? Don Alejo couldn't go to the police either, as many of them were compromised by the cartels. So he chose to protect what he built his entire life. When his workers arrived to work that day, he told them to go home early and enjoy the long weekend with their families, not giving away that anything was wrong. Once all of his workers left, Don Alejo prepared for war, and he would be just a one-man army. He went to his basement where he kept all of his rifles, and he then strategically placed them all in the doorways and windows of his house, with plenty of ammunition prepared. He also boarded up all the doors and windows. He then called his wife, knowing more than likely this is the last time he will ever speak to her. Nighttime then came, and he was waiting for the attack, but as the hours ticked by, nothing happened. However, around 4 a.m., Alejo heard the hum and roar of multiple truck engines outside his property. The Zetas had arrived and circled the ranch in formation. They were honking their horns, flashing their lights, and firing gunshots up in the air. At first, nothing happened, and the cartel assumed the old man just left his farm. However, the sound of a gunshot filled the night sky, and it wasn't from one of them. This then set the cartel into panic mode, and a battle then ensued. Alejo boarded up the windows, leaving gaps he can shoot through, and he went window to window taking shots at the Zetas. And due to the darkness, the Zetas couldn't figure out what window Alejo was shooting from, and they then blindly sprayed their guns at the property. During the gunfight, Alejo's marksmanship would come in handy. He dropped cartel member after cartel member. He had killed 4 of them, resulting in the cartel convoy retreating into the darkness. Alejo maintained his position, waiting for them to return. The cartel was flustered and knew they couldn't go back to their boss empty-handed, defeated by a 77-year-old man. So they drew up a plan. In their trucks, they had grenade launchers. The cartel once again approached the property, though they were worried to engage in another gunfight. Alejo then let out 2 more shots and he hit 2 more cartel members, before one member used the grenade launcher to bomb Alejo's house to smithereens. At this point, the battle had been going on for several minutes, which alerted the military, who were now closing in on the area. Instead of entering the house after bombing it, the cartel fled the scene instead, leaving 6 men behind. 4 were shot dead and 2 were unconscious due to being shot by Alejo. The military then arrived at the scene and they found the bodies of the Zeta members. The soldiers then entered the house, which was now filled with bullet holes and debris. They then found Don Alejo's body in the doorway to the bathroom with various wounds to the body and head. After being hit by multiple pieces of shrapnel and being shot, it's believed Alejo dragged himself to the bathroom to have one final showdown with the cartel before he passed away. This 77-year-old man went toe-to-toe with at least 20 heavily armed cartel members, with only using old hunting rifles. Don Alejo was a man of honesty and principle and hard work. The story of Don Alejo is a tragic tale, yet a tale of inspiration.